now here's where we're going to start to string up the guitar. This is the part that I showed you earlier where it's going to be different if you've got different electric guitars with different bridges. There are some old Kahlers and old, especially some old Floyd Roses where you actually will have to cut the ball off. If you still have them, you would have to cut this end off, you put it in there, and there's a locking mechanism that'll lock that string in. But you definitely have to cut these things off. So if you were wondering if you got one of those old Floyd Rose bridges, you know, with the whammy bars and all that, you might have to be doing that on your string. Make sure you got, of course, the correct strings. That's another probably important detail to pay attention to. On the packaging, they will tell you what's the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth string. The packaging should say that. And the strings go in order from the thinnest side, which is the first string, to the thickest side, which is the sixth string. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to put the ball right in here, and I put it right into in here, and I just kind of put it a little ways down. I have to put it all the way down. I take the peg, and most of these pegs will have a little groove on there, and if you can see it on the camera, a little bit of a groove. What I do is I just trace the groove as I pull it in here. Now I don't put it all the way in yet. And I pull up so that the ball, or at least what it will feel like, the ball of that string is at the bottom of that peg. And then I push down on the peg. But what I do is I push down and then I get just a little bit of a turn so that those grooves help to lock it in. And it should fit in pretty nice as you do that. If it doesn't, you might need to replace the peg. Maybe it's a little bit worn, or it could be the wrong size. I've seen that happen before, although I've always thought these were standard, but they might not be. And that's how you start. So here's the part where we're going to string up the guitar through the tuning pegs. Now, what I like to do, this is just a little quirk of mine probably, but what I like to do is, I don't know if you can see it here, but you got the holes in there. I don't know if you can kind of see how that looks. And what the holes are, I like to have them turned inward in sort of a 45-ish degree angle. The only reason I like doing that is just a little thing. It's probably not a big deal, but it just is easier for me to get the strings into the posts. So I just like to turn them in, and then on this side we just turn it this way. Also, another thing to always check on, and I'm going to just give you a quick rundown on this. Sometimes these pegs are a little loose, and there's this little hex nuts here. Sometimes I just have to tighten them just a tiny bit. Do not over tighten. Be very careful. If you're not sure of this, don't do this. This should be take this in if you think that they're loose. And also the pegs here, there's these little screws right here. Sometimes these things they're a little bit loose. And what I find I have to do is I just have to tighten them just a little bit so that they're not as loose anymore. Okay, if you're not really comfortable with this is something you should not do. But if you feel like you're going to be a little bit adventuresome, do it. Just take very good care on how you do that on the tuning pegs. Be back in just 1 second. I'm going to get that done. So here's where the magic happens. I take the string and I thread it through like so. Now, what I like to do, move the guitar a little bit here so you can see what I'm talking about, is I like to leave a little bit of slack. So I'm pulling on the string on the other side. You can't see it, but I'm pulling it through there. And then what I like to do, let me just get this camera up here. Then what I like to do here, I like to pull it up a little bit so I have a little bit of slack. So you want to try and get about 3 or 4 winds around that post to get it hooked in as best you can. And I found right about there, I put these 3 fingers, that's about how much slack I want. Now, I'm still holding it with my left hand. Let me just turn this a little bit here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Hopefully I can get the whole thing in here. There we go. So I'm pulling it through with my left hand. In my right hand, so I gave it a little bit of slack. And then what I like to do is I just like to push it down, just to hold it in place on this side. That's all I'm doing. I'm just holding it in place. That's it. So then what we do here, we crimp the string. We literally bend it so that we have a crimp on the inside. It should be crimped inside to the inside of the headstock. This is the headstock here. Then I take the remaining string, put it underneath, like so. So I just wrapped it underneath that string. So right now we're underneath, the string is facing this way. Then I take this string right here and I crimp it again over the string, just like that. Now, note, on my right hand, I'm pulling it taut here so that we can get it, you know, nice and firm in here at the post. And so then it should hold if you crimp them. So again, you thread it through, crimp to the inside of the guitar, take it, go underneath the string, wrap it around, crimp it again tight to the post while you're taking your right hand and pulling it taut like that. Also make sure at this point that you're in the nut groove. This is the nut of the guitar and you got the little grooves the string sits in. Can't tell you how many times I've actually missed this. But you want to make sure that it's in this groove. On your Stratocaster guitar, there are what you call these, they call them trees. You want to make sure that the strings are in the trees. And I'll show you that in just a sec. But right now, we hold it through like this, all right? I'm still got my right hand, my hand on this, I'm pulling it up like that. Just kind of holding it taut. That's all we're doing. And then what we do, we'll grab our best friend, the string crank. And what we do here is then we turn it. And you want to make sure that you're turning it so that the string is wrapping on the inside. So in this case I'm wrapping it clockwise. On this side, the thicker strings, I'm going to be wrapping it counterclockwise. So now all I'm doing is I'm going to turn it. And you know, feel it getting taut, and hopefully we'll get about 3 to 4 winds. If you get a little more, then I wouldn't worry about it. And just keep turning it. That's what I'm doing here right now. Still holding it with my right hand. And we pull this, just turn this a little tighter. I release. And there we go. Now I haven't checked the tuning at all. I just got it somewhat taut right now. We're going to check the tuning later. Though one other thing you want to do on your acoustic guitar, in fact you'll probably want to do this on all the guitars, is make sure that the ball, that string is firmly into the bridge. Sometimes it gets a little stuck somewhere. You want to make sure it's in there. If it's not, you may want to loosen it. Pull it a little bit, just gently pull and to get it tight. On the acoustics, you just want to make sure that you're pressed firm in here. In this case it is. Sometimes they may tend to want to pull out. Don't worry, it's okay. You just loosen a little bit and kind of redo the process here with the peg, and just make sure it's pressed firmly in. You want to try and do this with your hands. I've had a couple of times on some older guitars where I've had to kind of give a little bit of a tap. Be very careful with that. You don't want to damage anything. I would advise against it unless it's extreme conditions, and just push it taut like that. And right now we are set for now. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to come right back. I'm going to do that same exact procedure for the other 5 strings, and I will be right back. Just real quick on this one here, I'm going on the other side of the posts. I'm doing everything that I told you to do, except just remember that you're going to bend inside. So in this case, it's going to be this way. Crimp it, go underneath, like I told you, and then you go over, crimp it. And it should hold in place, and then you pull it taut with your right hand, and then use the good old-fashioned crank. And we're off to the races. Catch you in a minute.